So welcome everyone, Wisdom's Chats UK. Edward, you're our sole UK representative. so we
I think
can
it's
officially...
it's pretty much closed down in the UK between Christmas and New Year.
Yeah. Well, you know, Wisdom's just likes to go the extra mile. What can we say? We don't know what it means to stop.
Yeah, well, I mean, the government's trying to shut us down here again now as well. So we've just gone to a higher level of lockdown and all sorts of additional restrictions coming in place again. So
yeah,
you'll just have to stay virtually kicking against it. Yeah,
that's it. That's it. So well, thank you for joining us. It's good to have just this connection, and hoping that you have enjoyed a happy holiday so far, and the new year is just around the corner. There was with our announcement from our president last night. You know, South Africans are very quick with their memes and their humor. And so immediately after the announcement, my daughter sent me a meme that said, Cyril has extended 2020 by 3 months. So it might not be 2021 in January. We're just pushing through and hoping 2021 is going to start in March. But our topic for today is life about giving or getting, or giving? And I don't want to launch in first. So Herman, I'm wondering what your thinking is on this topic.
I think actually life is both about giving and getting. Even though, for example, I looked at some proverbs, and one which quite resonated with me was, we make a living by what we get. We make a life by what we give. And when I say, I think the one is as important as the other, I believe that without having anything, in other words, I must have gotten something in order to give it away. And yeah, we are in the season, or we just passed the season of giving. But again, if we don't get it before we can give it away, but I think there is a deeper thing for me, which is, I can't give love if I, for example, was very badly abused in my own childhood, and the capacity for love was never developed. And I think the same applies to empathy. So if I can only give away what I got. And particularly in these two instances, as I said, reflecting on love and empathy, if I haven't been exposed to that, and not only not exposed to them, but being abused very badly. And as I said, I was unable to develop the capacity for love and empathy. I can't give it away. That's my 3 cents worth.
Definitely more than 3 cents, Herman. Gave a lot. Thank you. And Ivan, where are you? What are your thoughts around the topic of giving and getting?
Yeah, look, I think Herman has pretty much hit the nail on the head there. You know, if you don't have anything, you can't give anything, and you know that runs both from a material perspective as well as from an emotional perspective. You know, and also from an experiential perspective, I suppose. So, you know, it's interesting. Over the years, we've come across many people who run various operations. A number of them. NGOs, as we call them here, non-governmental organizations, who purport to be supporting and giving and providing for communities that are perhaps less fortunate. And you know, often my perception, and this is just my perception of many of those people, is they actually have nothing to give. They're really looking to get resources to get money in to keep themselves alive, to put bread on their own tables. And the excuse is that they actually, doing work in these environments, in these communities, and they're providing these things, but they don't have the skills, they don't have the resources, they don't have the means, they don't have the mindset necessarily to really be able to help anybody. They're in survival mode themselves. And for me, that's a real challenge. If you're in survival mode yourself, how do you teach somebody else to prosper? You can't. It's the same. If you've never learned how to build a boat, how can you teach someone else to build a boat? You can't. And I think that goes right across the human spectrum of talents and abilities and skills. And as I say, knowledge and experience. If you've never had those things, there's the saying, what you can only teach what you have learned. I think there are too many people out there trying to teach things that they've never done themselves. They've never learned how to develop those skills themselves. They've read it on a piece of paper, and now they're regurgitating what they read on the piece of paper to other people, and there's no experiential knowledge element in that delivery. So yeah, I think Herman's point of if you haven't gotten it yourself, how can you give it? And that, as I say, that for me goes right across the spectrum. So yeah.
It's great examples, Ivan. It just gives it some structure in terms of understanding the concept of needing to receive or needing to get in order to give. Welcome, Trevor. I'm glad to have you on board, and so we'll come to you just now. We are talking on the topic of, is life about giving or getting? Herman started, and Ivan's just added his bit in. And so, Edward, tell us about your thoughts on the topic.
Yeah, I struggled, because when I started thinking about the topic, I was all soft and fluffy, and then I thought, tried to think a bit deeper, and I struggled. So I turned to my dictionary, like I often do in times of crisis, and I was amazed to find there's half a page of definitions of give. And then there's even more when it comes to like colloquialisms, like I don't give a damn. So that made me sort of think a bit more, and I thought, well, yeah, there are those nice sayings, and I love the one that Herman came up with, but I'm not sure it's correct. So I did a little bit more thinking around it, and thinking, well, yeah, okay. If you're going to give, you've got to receive, and all that sort of stuff, and it should all be equal in the end, shouldn't it? Because you can't give unless someone else receives. And then I did some thinking and thought, well, let's find some statistics. And you find that the richest 1% in the world own more than the poorest 50, the 50% at the bottom. So they have done an awful lot of taking. They've taken. And if you go all the way back to the Pareto principle, which I hate, because as Ivan says, a lot of people read it in a book. I hope you know what the Pareto principle is. Yeah, the 80-20 rule. Most people have read it in the book and then they just teach it. But it's actually about land ownership in Italy. 20% of the Italians owned 80% of the land. So a lot of taking. So it would seem to me that actually taking does you a lot of good. And you don't really care about what you give back. Otherwise, how would you be a banker that got a £2.5 million bonus when there's people in the UK going to food banks? Or take the example of my friend who finds accommodation for people that are escaping domestic violence. She earns 1/3 of a friend of hers with the same education, because he finds homes for people that can afford it. He's an estate agent. So someone that cares and gives gets rewarded less. But I do think you can't give unless you have received, because you can't give from an empty jug. You can't pour from an empty jug. But I also find when I give, I get more. I mean, I volunteer with a children's charity. I have a fantastic time. And I come back from there and I feel better about myself, because not because I've done some good, but because I've enjoyed myself. I've learnt more. But so I think there's two things. There's the spiritual side of giving and taking, which is much better to give because you then receive much more. As you sow, so shall you reap. But I think when it comes to financial stuff, assets, money, income, then people just grab as much as they can and they don't care about the rest of people. Otherwise, we'd have a fairer world. And it's great that Trevor's here, because I've missed these sessions, and he describes them as the park run for the mind, and my mind's gone a bit flabby. And my last comment is about park run. I volunteer at my local park run. I love doing it. But we struggle every single week to get enough volunteers. But we've got enough runners that if every runner volunteered once, we would not struggle for volunteers at all. So I think most people don't give. Most people take. That's my example from park run and from the division of wealth throughout the world. That's my thoughts.
Can I add something? Can I add something there, if I may?
Go, Herman.
Psychologists have done tests and have actually established that the people's sense of happiness is greater when they spend relatively more on others than on themselves. Now, these were genuine tests. So it's quite interesting in what we're discussing.
Thanks, Herman. That's a great addition. Trevor, over to you for your part of the park run. Handing the baton to you.
Well, morning, everybody. I hope you all had a great Christmas season. I got to tell you, Wisdom's UK Chats feels a hell of a lot like Wisdom South Africa Chats. So that's my first comment. My second comment, Ed, I think you always fuzzy and warm. So just note that. Herman, I missed your opening statement, which Ed wasn't sure was correct or not. So I'll go and refine that. Maybe you can just clip that part out for me and send it to me, Ivan. You're the tech guy. So you know, it all comes down to the question. Now, Lee, won't you read me the question again? Because today it was a very simple 6-letter question. Won't you just read the question again for us, please? You'll need to unmute yourself.
I'm getting there, sorry. I don't have it in front of me, so but I'm thinking it is life about giving or getting.
Aha. Okay. So I don't know where this taking thing came from, Edward. You seem to have not read the question this morning. It was about giving or getting. So I don't know if our UK Wisdom's Chats now is totally not about the question anymore, which is the reason I clock in, is to actually see if whether or not I have the intellectual capability of reading the question. So giving or getting was what I was about in when I the give and take. There you are. So there are two things I don't want to be given. I don't want to be given COVID, and it's something that can be very easily given. I have, in this last 10 days, for the first time in this year of 2020, had a whole lot of my mates who are now battling with scratchy, itchy throats. Some of them are taking some serious medication. Others are thinking about getting a jab in the arm. So I don't want to be getting from anyone this COVID virus. That's why I went to San Francisco just for a while so that I could just observe the sunset, look at the bridge. And as you may or may not know, Edward, we've been put into level 3, so we're not even allowed to go onto the ocean or onto a river or a dam. The upside is our potholes are now 80% full, so I've got a lake just outside my home. I'm just hoping a barbel will go in there and then I can fish off the side of my street, and with my mask on, I'll be fine. But I think what Herman said about giving is the truth. It releases endorphins. And you touched basically on the spiritual principle. And the spiritual principle is that you don't have to give it all away. But this little thing called a tithe. And then it's just really about deciding, how do you give your tithe? I don't care what anyone says. You get more pleasure out of giving than receiving. Unless it's COVID, in which case I'll kick your ass. So nice to clock into this time. I was a little behind the curve. I didn't realize how quickly it gets to 10:05. I looked up and I thought, geez, that's 8 o'clock in the UK. Let me give Edward a surprise and clock in this morning. So Edward, I clocked in this morning to give you a greeting and the rest of you a greeting for 2021 and beyond. It's going to be brilliant. It's going to be epic. And giving does not have to be of a material nature. It can be of a emotional nature. It can be of a time nature. It doesn't have to be something that looks like this, which is my chicken claw. Guys, it's nice to see that the UK looks just like South Africa, and that's why I never left to go there. So good to see you all, and we've got a great year ahead of us. I'm very glad that I have a small gin distillery and that I've got a lot of stock in my home to help my friends out with. I'm going to gift them a lot. I will be giving a lot of attention to my friends who didn't see this coming, which was just plain stupid because we knew what we were getting.
Thanks, Trevor. I do think I'm a little bit scared of this chicken claw, though. So I think, keep it well away. I don't want to be given that in any sense of the word. So thank you, everybody. When I was thinking about this as well, also I was going along the same lines as Edward, being all soft and mushy. And I realized that when I think back over my life, and maybe it came, this word getting, it's very much a part of our vocabulary. And I was thinking about school, of getting an A or getting your degree, and then getting married and getting a house and having children, which is a form of getting. And that these are things that we are sort of lined up from a social perspective, and I think, and maybe our own expectations, that these are things that are required, that there's this getting process of achieving and marking, getting our goals, marking these things off that says, I've done this, I've achieved this, I've made this, I've got to this place, and somehow that getting gives us a status or a recognition or an opportunity to mark where we are in the world, a place of belonging, and so that somehow has a meaning behind it, and then as Edward said, I was thinking about, so when does the getting, is there a place where the getting becomes accumulating, and where that it's not just about the getting of the things that I want or I desire or are important to me, but that I'm now need the affirmation of stuff, of material stuff, of position, and that there's the getting becomes more and more and more, and that accumulation, that the getting becomes the need, the greater need, and not just what we're looking for, but just the actual act of getting. So that's the one train of thought that I had. The other train of thought that I had was around I found this book to be absolutely excellent. It's a book by, now I've forgotten, I'll have to look it up quickly while I'm talking to you, but it's called Give and Take. And it's written by a social anthropologist, and who's done a lot, did some research with medical students, salespeople, and engineers to ask the question, is giving more than just that warm fuzzy, that nice, is it just nice to give, or are givers actually disadvantaging themselves by giving in terms of achievement and recognition? And he found in his studies of both givers and takers in those three areas, whether you're a student, an engineer, or a salesperson, that if you gave to the right extent, in other words, you didn't give in such a way that it cost you, or you were sacrificing something of yourself in that giving, that you actually achieved more than the takers. And there were rewards actually in recognition and in achievement that superseded the people that just took. And he gave a number of other examples in networking and all the rest of it. Whether that, I don't know how that answers Edward's point about 1% of the world taking, but it's just an interesting thing from that perspective. And then Ivan, I definitely do want to come back to you, but the one last thought that I wanted to add, and that is this whole thing of receiving, that it's better to give than to receive, and that positive feeling that we have when we give. One of the things that I have had to learn in my life is not only how to give, but also to receive. And receiving is actually hard. It's not always easy to be on the receiving end. There's a whole lot of humility that comes to receiving. And so, yeah, I just wanted to throw that into the pot. Ivan.
Yeah, thanks, Lee. I just want to flip this whole warm and fuzzy nonsense that you guys are engaging in here and turn it on its head a little bit, because I think if we look at the 1%ers, as it said, I don't believe they've taken anything. I think they've been given, they've been rewarded for what they've done. They've developed technologies, they've developed solutions, they've solved problems, they've created opportunities, they've employed people. They've been rewarded by the world and by the system in terms of what they've done, and many of them are actually giving back massively. So if you look at the Bill Gates and Melinda Gates Foundation, they have given billions of dollars, to disease eradication of various forms, vaccines. You look at Warren Buffett, $30-odd billion put into trusts to help poor people and so on. And I think there's a massive movement of giving from those levels. And without those people, we wouldn't have the technology, we wouldn't have the medical solutions, we wouldn't have the motor vehicle solutions, the electric cars, the solar panels, all of these things that have been developed by those people that have, yes, become extremely wealthy through the process. But I don't believe they took that. I think they were rewarded in terms of their contribution to the world. Yes, maybe they could have been distributed better. But at the end of the day, I don't believe it was a taking process. I believe they created massively and they gave massively in terms of jobs they created, families they supported, technologies they developed. So yeah, and Herman, I agree. There are people, I think, that sit in a strata, perhaps that are primarily takers. So I don't dispute the fact that there are takers in this world, and people that look to accumulate, as Lee says. But I don't think we can generalize and label all people who are extremely wealthy as simply as takers, because they would never have gotten there if they were simply takers. But, they had to have given to actually have created that kind of wealth.
Even though it's not quite of the, I'd like to add something to that. I agree that there should be a reward relative to the effort people put in. Whether the effort come from here or somewhere else is immaterial. A strike in Ireland, I think it was, proved that the strike by a general strike proved that the workers who clean away, the refuse workers, etc., are more important than bankers. Because the damage, what that happened with the accumulation of all the waste in the streets was absolutely devastating. But the point I want to really make, Ivan, if you look at the Googles and the Facebooks today, they're abusing the power they've got because of their strong financial standing. I mean, you look at Mark Zuckerberg, there is nothing really soft-hearted in that guy. And so he absolutely abuses the market power he's got, just as one example. And we could go into a lengthy discussion on that subject.
Nothing like a little controversy. Thank you. Edward, please go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to cut in because I think getting is a euphemism for taking, because to get is to come into possession of. And if you possess something, you take it away from someone else. And it's again back to that land ownership in Italy. And it's the same in the UK, most of the land. And I think, yeah, there are people that do great things and they should be rewarded. And we remember Trevor Nell's great example of the water, the guy selling the water, and that was really good, wasn't it? And I think that's good capitalism. But when you have such abject poverty, and I'll use the UK as an example, people going to food banks because they can't, and they're in work, they're being paid, but they can't earn enough to feed themselves. And you've got other people who are earning bonuses of millions of pounds for running banks, for running supermarkets, etc. Then I think there is something wrong with the give and take. And yes, you do get a few people that give a few billion away. But if you think about football players with all their money, they give very little away. A little old lady gives her pension away to help a poor person. So I think there is this huge disparity. And let's not suggest it's doing good, because it's not. It's exploiting the system. It's accumulating huge wealth. And Ivan, you mentioned medicines. Most medicines are actually discovered by scientists who don't make much money out of it. So, and yeah, we need entrepreneurs, we need profits, we need but it needs to be in balance, I think. And I think that would make a great subject about where is the balance between risk and reward, initiative, payment, whatever. Yeah, so that's my thoughts about it, because it's something I'm really passionate about, is this total inequality in society. And just one little thing going back to it gives me, do you actually take first and give later, or give first and take later? Boris Johnson, our Prime Minister, has just made 51 new members of the House of Lords, even though the House of Lords said there are too many Lords already. And he only did that because most of them gave to the Conservative Party. So did they give expecting a reward or whatever? So, is giving actually always pure?
Yeah, look, I think, you know, I think one needs to be careful. I think that for me, there's a big difference between taking and receiving. You know, taking implies, you know, you've actually taken it without the permission of the person who's actually is in possession of it. If you've been given something, whether it's material, educational, emotional, it's been given. You know, there's no need to take. You simply need to be, as Lee said, you need to be open enough to receive it, and receive it with the grace that with which it's been which it's been given. And once you've received it, you can then pass it on. If you take, for me, that's a completely different process, because that implies force, it implies resistance, it implies there's not a desire for you to have been given that. You're simply taking. So I think there's quite a big difference, and we can get tied up in semantics, I think. Yeah, you know, left, right, and center, but I do believe, and you know, Ed, you're talking about people like the sports people and the bankers and people like that. You know, those for me are not people that are adding value to society, and it boggles my mind that a footballer can get paid £500 million a year. You know, for what? What value has he really added to society? So yes, you know, I think there's a massive problem in those particular areas and things like that. But I think, you know, if we go back to our guy with the water example, you know, the entrepreneur that adds value should be rewarded for adding that value, and whether it's at a micro level or a macro level, I don't think that matters, because that person is truly adding value. He's creating jobs, he's creating opportunities, he's creating innovations. Whereas what does a banker create? Just problems, I think, in my opinion. Anyway, those are my thoughts.
That's what Wisdom Chat is about, is all these different ideas and opinions. And yeah, and I mean, I think one of the things that I'd like to add, just maybe to wrap up, unless there's somebody else that would like to add something, is that I just think about everything that I've been given that I didn't deserve. And there is privilege that we have to take into account. There are systems in place that have advantaged some versus others. And what do we do with what we've been given? So I think that's another question that I live with. I think if you live in South Africa, you live with that question daily. Every single day, we have somebody ringing our doorbell, asking for help in one way or another. And so what is your responsibility in those circumstances? You know, daily. And yeah, so they are questions that it's not theoretical questions. These are things that we're wrestling with on a daily basis. So is there anybody that wants to add anything before we end? Herman?
Lee, I'm going to forward an article to you entitled, "Why Should Garbage Men Earn More Than Bankers?" And you can distribute it to the group.
What a great title. That sounds amazing. I will, Jeff, please send it to me. And yes, I will send it on. I am looking for the topic for next week's chat, and I don't have it in front of me. So unless somebody else, let me just see if I can find it.
Sorry, everyone, I've got to shoot.
Okay.
So thanks, everyone. Have a fantastic new year, and looking forward to a blast in 2021. Enjoy it.
Thanks, everybody.
Cheers. Bye.
Thanks, everybody. And yeah, so I'll just send you the topic via the email, which I'll send out today.
Okay, Lee, it might be worth just having a fiddle with